Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the IDB Invest Sustainability Week 2026, here in the beautiful Barbados. It is an honor to welcome the distinguished representatives of the Government of Barbados, including the Honourable Shantia Bradshaw, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Environment, National Beautification and Fisheries, and the Honourable Wilfred Abrahams, Attorney General and Senior Minister coordinating government policies, as well as members of the Cabinet, heads of delegations, members of delegations, executive directors, and senior management of the Inter-American Development Bank Group. We are delighted to welcome all participants joining us here in person, as well as those connecting virtually from around the world. Before we begin, kindly take a moment to silence your mobile phones and electronic devices. For those using interpretation services, simultaneous translation is available through the event app. Please open the app, select today's agenda, choose this session, and then select your preferred language. The app also includes the full program of the event, speakers' biographies, and any agenda update throughout the week. So we encourage you to consult it regularly. If you are sharing moments from the event on social media, please use the hashtag SWW26. We also look forward to welcome you later this evening at the opening cocktail reception. And now, to officially begin our program, I can invite everyone to please rise for the national anthems of Barbados. Thank you. Please be seated. We will now begin with the opening video. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen.
The flying fish didn't wait for perfect conditions. It understood that progress begins in motion. When currents shift, when balance is challenged, movement becomes connection. A movement that can become yours, to rise, to cross, to connect worlds. The flying fish moves as part of a larger flow, linking water and air, ideas and action, intention and impact. Because meaningful change doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when systems move together. When capital, innovation, nature, and people align. Movement reveals what static views cannot. How systems connect, how progress takes shape through motion. This is what movement makes possible. Let's get moving.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Barbados. Welcome to Sustainability Week 2026. We're very excited you're here. I'm Leonardo Mazzei, I'm from IDB Invest, and I have the honor to be responsible for the organization of this event together with many, many other my colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. Are you happy to be here?
Hey!
I'm so happy this is finally here. My name is Karina Coburn. I am the country representative for the IDB group here in Barbados. Welcome.
So 2 years ago, we were in the heart of the Amazon in Brazil, in Manaus. This time, we're in Barbados, and for the first time, we're in the Caribbean. For us, this is really significant. So let's begin. Karina, we just saw this powerful video. Tell us about this flying fish. Why the flying fish? And also,
For sure.
How does it feel for this to be in Barbados and in the Caribbean?
Well, Leo, absolutely a historic moment for Barbados and the Caribbean. The first time Sustainability Week is being held here, and it couldn't be more opportune. It couldn't be a more wonderful time. Barbados is a place that understands the urgency of sustainability. And so just like in the Amazon where we talked about how we conserve the forest, here in the Caribbean we talk a lot about global issues like disaster risk management. We talk about inclusion, we talk about renewable energy. So this is a moment for Barbados and the Caribbean to lead the conversation on sustainability.
All right. Wonderful. So why sustainability here and today? I think part of the reason was really to challenge us to do more investments, to identify new opportunities, to strengthen new relationships and existing ones, and really to try to dynamize what we want to try to accomplish is really empowering more activities, more investment, more bankable projects in the Caribbean, and of course, more impact for our people and for the region. So, what should we expect?
So we're going to work very hard. We're going to meet new people. We're going to make new connections. And through those connections, we're going to do new projects. Are you ready? Yeah. Great.
So success looks like at the end of this week. Let's say we could identify one or two things that define success, Karina. What would that be?
Partnerships. We want to take away from here the connections, the partners, the people that work together, and we want to be able to do new projects through IDB Invest and through the IDB Group. Thanks, Leo.
Wonderful, wonderful. So then it's really time for us to say thanks. First and foremost, thanks to all of you for being here with us today. Look at this room. This is amazing. If we were only going to create partnerships between those that are in the room, we are already far ahead in this journey together. But also thanks to our donors, thanks to our sponsors, thanks to our partners. Only with you and your support we make this possible. Thanks to every single one of you that has worked to make this really possible. This is absolutely appreciated. We have a lot of local partners. We have a lot of players that are instrumental to this. But of course, a special thanks goes to the government. The government of Barbados, they have been our partner from day one in this initiative, and really without them, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we're hoping to accomplish.
And thanks to you for being here, and thanks to all those joining us online.
So then, with this, we would like to welcome
Minister, please. Minister Indarwera.
Welcome. Glad to be here. Please.
You got me here today.
Okay. So, Minister, welcome to Sustainability Week. Thank you for hosting us here in Barbados. What does it mean for the government of Barbados to host Sustainability Week for the first time in the Caribbean?
Well, thank you, Karina, and good morning to everyone. It's very important for us because Barbados does not want to be on the sideline of the conversation. We actually want to be part and center in the conversation. And all of you do know the tremendous work and leadership that our Prime Minister has given to the whole subject of sustainability and indeed resilience. So therefore, it's a very historic moment for us, for Barbados being the first Caribbean island to host Sustainability Week.
Excellent. And for your ministry, the Ministry of Public and Private Investment, is this an opportunity?
Oh, definitely. We are glad to be able, first of all, to host all of you here, but to give us a chance to see right across government, the private sector, investors, and indeed the environmentalists, what opportunities can come out of this week's session. And we do look forward, therefore, to engaging right across the entire week to make sure that investment, NGOs, and indeed our environmentalists and those involved in innovation, technology would indeed be at the core of all of this. And indeed, when we speak to technology, we don't only speak technology, we also speak people, because we have to bring along people as part of the conversation.
I've got one more question. So after the sessions today and during this week, when we have time to visit Barbados, what should we do?
Well, the first thing I want you to do is remember that Barbados is a place that invented rum. And therefore, I invite all of you to taste our rums, emphasis on rums, because we have a wide variety of refineries here in Barbados. I also want you to make sure that you enjoy the Barbadian culture. Be sure to visit Oystons to take in the folklore that takes place there on evenings. I know that the conference ends on Thursday, and we'll be going to Spice Town also to get you involved in good Barbadian culture in Spice Town. And my ministerial colleague, the Honorable Colin Jordan, is looking forward to hosting you down there in good St. Peter style.
Can't wait. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. So, really, Karina, are we
Sit
ready?
for us.
Yeah?
We're done.
We're good? So I think we're ready to start. Let's hear from our president, and let's get moving.
Let's get moving.
All right.
Hello everyone and welcome to Sustainability Week. I'm sorry I cannot be with you in Barbados, especially for this first Caribbean edition of the Sustainability Week. And there's no better place to do it than Barbados, a country that has become a regional leader in sustainability and resilience. This week, we are bringing together more than 350 companies across key sectors, from critical minerals and AI to innovation and financial services. Nearly half of these companies are from the Caribbean. Why the Caribbean? We choose to hold this edition in the Caribbean because the region's potential has never been clearer. Demand for investment in infrastructure, energy, transport, connectivity continues to grow. And the region has also strong advantages in sectors such as energy, resilience, and nature-based solutions. And innovative financing tools, as well as smarter approaches to risk allocation, are helping to bring more private investment into the region. But realizing this potential requires mobilizing private capital at scale. That's where IDB Invest comes in. IDB Invest has a proven track record of working with companies across the region to develop finance and scale projects while bringing in private investors. Through this originate-to-share business model, IDB Invest is expanding the pipeline of bankable opportunities and bringing in more private partners. And with the successful closing of IDB Invest, $3.5 billion recapitalization, we are entering a new phase with greater scale and stronger capacity to support the region. This will allow us to structure more complex solutions and deploy local currency financing, guarantees, equity, and blended finance for more impact. It also means moving earlier in project, supporting larger transactions, and attracting more global investors into the region. And this is already translated into concrete investments across the region. Let me give you examples. In Jamaica, IDB Invest is working with Jamaica Public Service Company to modernize the country's electricity grid through a $100 million investment. That's already benefiting 700,000 households and businesses and enabling more than 20,000 new connections between 2023 and 2025. In Guyana, we are working with the Caribbean Green Building to finance the country's first EDGE certificate hotel, a 4 Points by Sheraton. And with Massey Group, one of the Caribbean's largest conglomerates, we are supporting regional logistics and trade through a $150 million operation. Here in Barbados, recent examples include a $50 million investment to modernize the port of Bridgetown, as well as support for PACE Digital to advance financial inclusion for underserved communities. And there's more to coming, including new operation in the Caribbean focused on technology, digital services, and support for small and medium enterprises. 2 years ago, in Manaus, Brazil, Sustainability Week led to initiatives ranging from a natural bond issuance to the expansion of the Amazon Finance Network, benefiting more than 2 million people across the region. This year, we have the opportunity to deliver even more. In a world of repeated shocks and uncertainty, the Caribbean has a clear opportunity to position itself as a hub for sustainable investment, innovation, resilience, and growth. And that is what this week is about. And as this edition slogan says, let's get moving. Thank you very much.
It is now my pleasure to welcome Mr. James Scriven, Chief Executive Officer of IDB Invest, for the strategic conversation, Scaling the Caribbean's Next Growth Phase. James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome to beautiful Barbados. Minister, it's a pleasure for you to host us. It's a real pleasure, and to all the cabinet. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for seeing so many good friends and clients of us. I'd like to tell you a short story of why sustainability in Barbados. You heard about why the flying fish. Let me tell you a few other thoughts. One, a few years ago, we started with Sustainability Week. 2019 in Panama was all about connectivity and regional integration. 2 years later, we moved and did it in Miami, and it was all about the capital for Latin America, how you connect international capital markets to the development challenges in our continent. Then we moved to the heart of the Amazon. We moved to Manaus. And while it was regionally focused for the entire Caribbean and Latin America, the deep down and the double click was on the Amazon. We're moving now to Sustainability Week for the first time in the Caribbean. So I'm going to say a few thoughts of why the Caribbean, why Barbados, and then I'm going to introduce 3 powerful people that are transforming our region. One, many years ago, people referred to the Caribbean as very fragmented, thank you. Everybody's awake? Okay. Fragmented, small, not connected, very vulnerable. While the vulnerabilities still exist, we're seeing an amazing transformation happening in our continent, specifically in the Caribbean. There are many geopolitical things happening, but when you think about how the region is coming together and the issues of connectivity and regional integration, secure supply chain, its connection with the US, Central America, and South America is at a critical stage. And while we're all used to coming to the Caribbean on vacation, it's important that we focus on the business opportunities that we're seeing coming out of our investments in the Caribbean. We're going to be inviting and having discussions about islands, but also very importantly, there are 2 economies in the Caribbean that are transforming as no other economies in the world, and these are Guyana and Suriname. So we're going to have a deep dive and have a conversation about those particular countries and the role that they're playing of integration between the Caribbean and South America. So that's why the Caribbean, why Barbados? You heard from the minister, Barbados, for a number of years, continues to lead the CARICOM and has become the voice of the Caribbean. You're going to be hearing tomorrow from the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. For those of you who have not met her, Barbados is worth a trip just to listen to her. She's an amazing leader. She put in the spotlight of everything we're doing when it comes to regional integration, when it comes to vulnerability. You're going to talk about the climate crisis with her and many different areas. So that's the reason why we feel that the level of innovation that is happening in Barbados and the voice of her Prime Minister, we call it the mega voice, the megaphone for the continent. That's the reason we chose Barbados over here. And I'm going to be having a conversation with her. A few years ago, I would not have been standing over here talking about the Caribbean because I had no idea about what business looked like in the Caribbean. But about 10 years ago, we started a journey. That journey was co-led with a group of directors, and I'm seeing many of the directors sitting over here from the Caribbean. And particularly, so welcome all the directors from our board that are sitting here. So when you commingle, ask them. Yeah, that was a good plan. That journey started, we had one officer in Jamaica, and we were doing maybe $20, $30 million of business a year. Over the last 10 years, we've moved to have 30 people in the Caribbean, focusing on all our Caribbean countries. We've done over $2 billion of business. We've done 58 projects. So now I can say we know the Caribbean. And when we talk about during these days, you get a much better understanding of our role in the Caribbean. We've done $900 million in the financial sector, $700 million in infrastructure and energy, over $400 million in the marine economy. So we know the Caribbean, and when you talk among us, you'll get a much better understanding of the Caribbean. About a year ago, I said I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I decided to hire a flagship hire. So Daryl White is somewhere over here. So when people, I think you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to stand up. Okay. So Daryl, I usually, going into the World Cup, I usually call him the Messi of the Caribbean. This is not something you want to share in the Caribbean. It's all about cricket, and I'm not going to be good at that. But I can tell you, I am serious about doing business because of the people that we hire. And he's going to introduce his team, and he's going to have a discussion about what this all looks like. So this is why this is extremely important to us. But don't hear from me. You're fed up of listening to me. I'm going to invite 3 people to the stage. These 3 people are transforming our sub-region, and I want to have a conversation with them for them to tell you how they're doing it. So the first one, our local person and a good host, Roger Blackman. Please join me. He's the managing director of the Barbados Light and Power Company, the leading electricity company in Barbados. Thanks for joining us. This name I always remember. James, come up. So James McLethy, he's the CEO of the Massey Group, one of the Caribbean largest. Thanks for joining us. And this person I've known for about 10 years. Evelyn, please join us. Evelyn is the CEO of FinaBank. He came to all our sustainability weeks. How many hours did it get you to get to Manaus last time?
About 20 hours.
30 hours. So I think this was closer for him to be able to come. So let me sit down now and have you listen directly from them. So if I can start with James from Massey. I'm going to divide the questions in 3 areas. The first one is opportunities, the second one is challenges, and the third one is going to be reflections. So let me start with opportunities. From your perspective, James, what shifts are underway across the Caribbean's economy, and how's the region evolving to be able to grasp those opportunities? And welcome again.
Thanks a lot, James. Yeah, easy name for me to remember as well. So I think 3 things I would say. For one, I think the region is becoming way more connected, not just within the region, but I think globally. And at breakfast we talked a little bit, but I'll embarrass the IDB a little bit. One of the things we are doing at Massey is we look at the partnerships within the region, but I think the partnerships outside the region. And I think we at Massey at least are exploring those relationships and leveraging them to bring capabilities into the region. When we first started to work with the IDB, I had to explain a little bit about the IDB. This is not a relationship around funding. This is a relationship that brings a level of partnership and capabilities that allowed us to improve our governance and has allowed us to be even more successful globally. And if I add that to things like we've done relationships with OpenAI, we've done relationships with a number of different people globally, and that shows you that the region as a whole can attract real global capabilities and scale. So my ask and my push, at least in our group, is to push that sort of capability and bring that partnerships to connect the region even more, not just within the region, but I think globally. The 2 things I will also add is, I think the world is, we talked about resilience. When I was in business school, we talked about offshoring and nearshoring, and that was all about efficiency and labor arbitrage. I think the world has changed quite a bit. I think what you're seeing now, and if you listen to conversations, especially on the Eastern Hemisphere, Europe, the world is resetting around resilience and relationships. The one thing we know in the region, in Caribbean and Latin America, is around resilience and relationships. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to explore and exploit a moment in time. And that leads me to my 3rd point. About a year ago, I think I did a panel similar, and I spoke about what I call the David and Goliath syndrome we have in the region. I think we have this interesting combination of new technology, AI and other technologies, and the geopolitical opportunities for the region. It will allow what is perceived to be small companies, small markets, to compete and win against bigger players that tend to be slower. The one thing that the Caribbean has is creativity and innovation. And it sometimes comes in the form of art and music and athletics, but it exists in business. And if we could bring that with some scale and capital, I think that allows David to compete and beat Goliath globally. And I think that is how I think the region is changing, but I think it's a unique opportunity for us to take it and do something much bigger because it has huge impact for the region and for our people.
The speed in which Caribbean companies and individuals are adapting to the speed at which change and taking advantage of some geopolitical shifts. And a lot of people talk about geopolitics or nearshoring. It's a lot about friendly shoring today and partnerships. So thanks for that, James. Roger, I know when I saw you this morning, and I know you can distinguish the people that come from the Caribbean because everybody's using ties. And I had to ask Roger to take off his tie because he was going to be the only one with a tie. So thanks, Roger, for joining us, and it's a real pleasure. How are you seeing this with respect to the connectivities you're seeing in Barbados, and particularly the transformation that the Barbados economy is doing and the impact it has over your company?
Thank you, James. And I'll pick up on a couple of things that the other James would have mentioned just now. Sir, first of all, thank you for organizing and for inviting me to be on the panel. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here. I think connection-wise, we just came out of a CEO's conference, CARELEC CEO's conference last week, which was a great success here in Barbados. And one thing resonated quite strongly with me, and that is how similar some of the challenges that we're facing as utilities and as countries are. And that comes to the issue of connectivity and connections and partnerships. Because I think there's a real opportunity, as small as we are individually, to aggregate and look at project pipelines as opposed to just projects on their own. There are several areas and initiatives that are common among the islands. That came out quite strongly last week. Battery storage, grid stability, resilience, reliability. Those, if you have a bingo card, you would say in bingo within the first 15 minutes of the conversations. So certainly partnerships, looking at opportunities to create project pipelines or aggregating projects is a big opportunity, I think, regionally. And picking up on another thing that James would have mentioned, oftentimes you think of size as a disadvantage, and perhaps that has been the case for many years, but that has changed quite significantly, and now, I think we have the opportunity to turn it on its head. Size actually can be a huge advantage for us. You have agility, the ability to adapt and be flexible very quickly. You don't want to be taking huge risks or chances on things as critical as energy and electricity infrastructure, but certainly we can test and do things here in a way that would be almost impossible to do at pace in a much larger country or environment. The tools that we are seeing available to us, artificial intelligence, is now allowing small countries, small teams to do what would have taken huge groups before. So from my perspective, those are some key opportunities that I'm seeing at the moment: partnerships, collaboration, aggregating projects, and making use of technologies that empower our teams.
We've taken advantage of a learning exercise that we learned over here in the Caribbean, that size being smaller actually helps you adapt much quicker. And we've gone through our internal transformation that has a lot to do with the size in which we are. We're small, but trying to hit above our weight. So can we shift from the islands to a continent? Suriname, and in particular, maybe your reflections, Evelyn, on what are the incredible economic transformation your country is going through, and if you can share what that means, not only for your country, for Guyana, but what it means for the continent.
Thank you, James, for having us here. The Guyana story is amazing. They found oil, tremendous growth, and Suriname, very large country physically, but the economy is pretty small, 4 billion GDP. And couple of years ago, 2 years ago, Total Energies did their final investment decision. So we are at the beginning of a huge transformation in Suriname currently. If you look at the investment that Total Energies together with the local oil company will do in the coming 2 years will be 10 billion. So twice or 2.5 times the GDP which Suriname has. The projections are that from 2028 to 2029, GDP will grow at a pace of 30 to 40% yearly. And that's only with one block, Block 54. We do know that there are other energy companies that are looking and that are on the edge of doing a second final investment decision that will only accelerate the total investments above the already above the 10 billion that is already being done, and also the 30% GDP growth from 2028 onwards, which means that the growth that Guyana experienced, I think the same will happen. But the oil investment decisions are one part. I think the most important part is what we are doing now as a financial system, but also the energy companies, is building the whole ecosystem around the energy companies. That's services, that's logistics, talent, IT, financial systems. Currently, the amount of investments that are being done in Suriname are tremendous. In the coming 3 to 5 years, you will see the whole landscape changing towards a more developed economy.
And many of you know the story of Guyana, few of you know the story of Suriname. And take advantage of this gentleman and a few other clients that we have from Suriname to get to know that. And I'm saying it is while everybody knows the speed in which Guyana is growing, few of us know the speed in which Suriname is going. The stable economy it has, the speed at which it's growing, how safe it is to be able to invest and to actually walk physically over there. It's a gem in itself, and I would take advantage of that to look into. We're very gun-ho, as you know, and we can talk a bit about that in the next question, because we're in the process of investing heavily into Suriname. So James, I go back to you. You're a regional player, obviously born in Trinidad, but with a regional presence in many markets, and you probably saw your supermarkets over here and your distribution centers over here. Tell us what it has been from becoming a local player to a regional player. What are the barriers that you needed to do? We always speak about size and integration does matter, and I think Massey is a good example of that. So tell us how that journey has been.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to sit, and it's exciting to sit here and speak to something that was built by people that came before me for 102 years. And as we go through our strategy process this year, let me explain a little bit of where that comes from. At the forefront of that, if I think about it, are people that sit and create that. And I know we speak about people all the time, but let me give you practical examples. Every one of our countries are run by local people. Right? Guyana is run by the Guyanese, Barbados is run by Bajans, Jamaica, same thing, because they know the culture of those markets very well. So one of the reasons I think we've been quite successful is that understanding of the local market and the community. The second thing is there's a brand that comes and everybody understands, high integrity, right, and reliability. When you put these things together, and what we do is we could connect those into one platform. And what we simplify, and what we rarely do is we break bulk from large partners. And that might be Colgate-Palmolive, right? Colgate-Palmolive does not want to sell toothpaste and break up bulk and sell toothpaste in the hinterlands of Guyana. What we do is we take that relationship, that brand, that set of people that understand the markets, we break the bulk, and we move it through the region safely and efficiently and get a good margin for it. That has allowed us to be successful thus far. What we are doing now, James, actually is, if I shift to the front, there's a significant investment around technology, a significant investment around a new version of people leadership. And what we're trying to do is create one platform. So for example, when we have international investors, what they see is one diversified risk profile. Right? When you're dealing with a partner, they see one customer to talk to. And that allows us to break that bulk, whether it's financing or capital or toothpaste, and move it through the region extremely efficiently and effectively. The big excitement for us now is how do we move product in the other direction? And that is kind of leading, if I think about what we're going to do in the future, is to build that ecosystem and that platform to shift things in another direction.
Thanks, James. And Evelyn, talk a bit about your bank. Talk a bit about the growing pains of the growth story in Suriname. What are the things that you're seeing? What are the helps that you're needing? What are the areas that you think would be important for all of us to focus on to help Suriname grow at the speed at which it's doing?
So if you look at the past periods, we are just out of an IMF program, but the economy has been growing at a very slow pace. But the growth drivers in the economy is, for the past years have been the construction for the oil and gas. What we are seeing that, especially 2025 and 2026, the economy will grow at, I think, approximately 5% at GDP, which means that with the oil and gas development, there are a lot of investments going on. If 6 ports are being built currently, new airport, new airplanes, World Trade Centers. And what we expect and what we project is that there will not be enough liquidity in the financial system to support the growth. I mean, if you have a growth of 30% with the GDP of approximately 7 billion, 8 billion, and the financial system is, I think, $4 billion US dollars, I think we will need to have, as financial sector, support from outside, get new liquidity, build new partnerships with established Caribbean banks, which we are already doing. But especially get in smart capital, because Suriname used to be a very small mining economy, which didn't need very sophisticated capital, which didn't need a lot of capital. But with these developments, we will need a lot of capital, but also support in making banks and the whole financial system more sophisticated, because previously a loan of $1 million was a large loan. And if you look at the current projects now, then one project is approximately 50 million, 60 million US dollars. If you look at the large lending capacity of all banks together, we are not able to finance those big projects. So in our perspective, a lot of partnerships within the Caribbean are important, partnerships with Caribbean banks, but also with banks such as IDB Invest, which is very pivotal for the financial sector in terms of partnership and in terms of providing liquidity to the market. We had a loan from you last year, which we supported. Challenges are, of course, in those type of economies, we tend to focus a lot on the large projects, large corporates, and what we did last time in Manaus is sign the sustainability framework, in which IDB also will support the financial system to focus on financial inclusion, micro and small entrepreneurship. Because what you tend to see in those economies, large corporates grow, and the smaller companies tend to lag or fall out because of the focus on the large companies. So we're getting a lot of support from IDB in terms of financial inclusion and giving support to the SME and micro, but also liquidity will be very important, and having partnerships. I'm always telling my colleagues within the Bankers Association, we don't have to compete finally anymore. We need to work together, because there will not be enough liquidity together to finance the growth in the country.
And especially for financial institutions that operate in Suriname, as you've heard from Evelyn, the growth, the speed at which it is growing requires financial services to come not only from within the country, from outside of the country.
Yes.
For many of your regional and global players, that is a good example to do. We've had an amazing run, an amazing experience. We signed the sustainability framework in Manaus last time. We were together, and a few weeks ago we went to the board to present an equity investments in FinaBank. So that's the journey that we're seeing together with a flagship institution, as we see. We talk a lot about the blood of the economy, or the the speed in which it's growing. And a lot has to do with financial services, but a lot has to do with energy also. And maybe the shift to you, Roger. How do you see the growing demands of energy, both in Barbados and regionally, and the challenges that you see to be able to keep on with that growth?
Okay, so I maybe highlight three areas. One is grid modernization. So that's a priority for not just us, but most utilities around the world for that matter. And that's being driven by the change in technology and the transition from high carbon energy systems to low carbon energy systems. The grids that we have today, both here and around the world, were largely designed for a different type of generating technology, for fossil fuel driven technology, for centralized generation where you have a central hub and you have the energy fed by arteries out to customers. That's quickly changing and has changed. Even here in Barbados, we have 3,500 customers actually are energy producers, prosumers we call them. They feed energy into the grid, we pay them for it. We have then the challenge of managing that and dispatching that in an efficient, effective way and maintaining stability. So the whole design of the grid here and around the world has now to adapt to changing technologies. There are a number of factors or measures that are taken to modernize the grid. To allow it to work stably with things like solar and wind and hydro and other technologies. What's becoming really critical for us is energy storage. A lot of our energy and our renewable transition is built around intermittent resources like wind and solar. And so going forward, storage plays a tremendous role, or will play an important part. And that perhaps leads me to the third thing, which is managing. And I know this is Sustainability Week, but I'm sure during the course of the discussions over the next few days, in addition to sustainability, we'll be talking about Affordability Week and Reliability Week, because those three things there's a lot of tension between those three objectives, and oftentimes many trade-offs. If the most reliable system or the most sustainable system oftentimes isn't the most affordable. And so what we are focusing, call it the energy trilemma, and what we are focusing on, and leaders in the energy sector across the region and globally, is how to find the right balance. And that's working with governments, policymakers, regulators, stakeholders, to evaluate various scenarios, develop plans that, again, are agile, flexible, that allow you to pivot when things globally change. But those conversations are important to find that right balance. The last thing perhaps I would say is from a regulatory framework standpoint, it really is important here, and I see it again across the region, to have predictable regulatory frameworks that will bring investors in, that will bring the capital that's necessary to help with the transition. We were having a discussion at breakfast this morning. We talked about certainty, and really it isn't certainty for capital. It's about clarity and consistency, and that will bring the capital in. The capital will cost the risks. But what is really important is that there's some consistency around the regulatory frameworks that we have across the region.
Thank you. Very well said, Roger. And I'd like to emphasize on a few areas that you did. One, historically, we all thought that sustainability was a good to have. We realized over the years, and a number of areas, both socially and economically and environmentally, is a must-have. And you're putting on the table also affordability and reliability. So those are areas that are going to be extremely important, particularly with a region that is well dispersed in terms of its land. I'm going to take advantage to make an announcement, using Roger's words. Later on today, we'll be launching what we call a Ready and Resilient Enterprise. It's a pragmatic approach to help businesses throughout the region prepare, adapt, respond, and recover from disaster. So where's Elin? Stand up, please, Elin. So she has a checkbook of $2 billion to invest in the next 5 years. So you probably want to approach her during the coffee break. But we clearly are for us, it's extremely important to help companies recover from natural disasters. You're going to hear from the Prime Minister tomorrow how vulnerable this region is when it comes to natural disasters, and we're ready to support and recover those companies as soon as possible. So that's probably a contact that you want to walk away with. Last question to the three of you. Looking ahead, could you define and what will be required to reach the scale and opportunity across this region? And if I can go with you, Roger, then James, and close with Evelyn.
Sure, I will. So maybe pick up from where I left off. I think that the regulatory and policy frameworks that we have in each jurisdiction are really important. It's critical that regulatory policy and government policy are in alignment. It's important that the frameworks are clear and consistent so that investors can appropriately cost risks when they're making investments in the markets. And I want to pick up, even though this isn't exactly the question you asked, on something you just mentioned just now in relation to resilience and disaster management and so on, because that's one area that I think the region has done really well on. And I'll put a plug in for CARILEC, the Regional Association of Electric Utilities and Energy Partners. They have a program called the Caribbean Disaster Assistance Program. And all of the utilities, or many of the utilities, contribute to a fund and then contribute resources in times of disaster in a particular territory. So Jamaica would be a good example. That's a perfect example of where collaboration and partnership in the sector has worked to the success of the entire region. I think building on that success in other areas like procurement and looking at things where economies of scale may be still hurting us, whether it's procuring solar panels, poles, cables, things that are consistent across the region is something that we need to look at next and spend some time and some brain power on putting into place so that we can achieve the same level of success there that we've gotten on disaster response regionally.
And I know you're going to hear a lot during these 2-3 days about resilience and disaster response. I just wanted to make sure that you understand how important this is for us. We dispersed, we financed the container port in Kingston in the middle of a hurricane. I think it's important to understand that that is business as usual, unfortunately, but we need to be prepared for that. James, what are your views?
I think I'll leave with three things. One is, I think we have to continue to invest in our people, right? So one of the things we want to do is continue to invest. And I say that, I'll give another example because I'll connect it to point two, which will be technology. We open a very large, one of the largest warehousing systems in Trinidad. We're going to do one in Guyana this year. And forget all the robotics and technology that's in it. I think the most impressive thing about it is to actually build the capability of the people that run that warehouse. So what we've actually done is bring that type of technology into the region through that commitment. So I think one thing is to continue to invest in our people to elevate our capability so we can compete. The second thing is important. I think we have a unique position and point in time where technology will allow us to compete. And we have to back that with real investment and responsible use of technology. Right? And I think this will allow, this is my David and Goliath analogy, we can and will win. And the third thing, which is also connected, is I think partnerships. The partnership with you, yeah, there was some funding and some financing, that's great. But I think the real value of the partnership has been the friend of my friend is a friend. So when I was in Paraguay, I met Rosario, I see Rosario there. We're going to go down and see Rosario in August this year, my ex-school, to see how the excellent operation she's running there from an agriculture perspective. I sat for 5 minutes and spoke to you, and we realized that Caroland is a partner that we have, that they're interested in, and now we are having a conversation. So my big takeaway I'll ask of everybody in this room is pick one person you've never met before, and for some reason commit to building a relationship with that person. Because I think the power of what this is the relationships and partnerships that can be created out of an event like this that is better for the region, Latin America and the Caribbean.
Very well said, James. Thank you. Evelyn, your final thoughts, and then I'll close.
Yes, so from a Suriname perspective, I think 2 points, talent and trade and finance barriers should be lowered. Let me give you an example. Suriname is growing, Guyana is growing, and there is unemployment rates over the Caribbean, 18 million market, which means that we can get a lot of talent from the Caribbean, but the barriers are still too high to get people moving around the Caribbean. So what you see happening in countries like ours, a lot of people from India, from the Philippines, and other countries are coming in, while we could use more Caribbean people with experience from, for example, Trinidad in Suriname, because the oil and gas sector there declines, and it increases in Suriname, it increases in Guyana. So if we were able to get CARICOM to step down from only a framework to really get it operational and let people move freely, such, like in Europe or the US, it would be benefit the scale of the Caribbean and make the Caribbean much stronger. But we also see in trade and investments a lot of barriers when our Surinamese companies want to export, import barriers, and those kind of things. I think, as the previous speaker, James, already mentioned, if we can get better, stronger partnership and free movement of goods, but also free movement of financial services. I think in our case, FinaBank case, we rather invest together with IDB, because then the barriers are gone, than investing directly in one of the Caribbean countries with a lot of barriers and a lot of tariffs and taxes. So the key takeaway is, let's make CARICOM from a regulatory framework to a real operational one internal market, so we can profit from the scale we really can have.
Thank you, Evelyn. And maybe to share a few final remarks. One, hopefully you understood from the opening statements from the minister, myself, and the panel, that the Caribbean is entering a new phase, a phase of growth, regional integration, and some of the ghosts of the past are no longer there. And I think it's important that you all take some time to understand the region and grow it. It has a level of regional ambition that I have never seen before in my lifetime. Importantly, to understand that the private sector is playing a leading role. We operate in 26 countries across Latin America and the Caribbean, and seldomly we see how close the private and the public sectors are working together to be able to develop a country. And I would take advantage of that statement. But again, reinforcing that the private sector has been the level of growth. A few final points. Together with us over here and infiltrated in this group, there are people from the IDB group. And I want to do a shout out to that, and I'm going to ask a few people to stand up. Bear with me. Sustainability Week did not only move from the Amazon to the Caribbean. In that transformation, in that journey from one way to the other, we're talking more about the IDB group as opposed to IDB Invest. And there's a new logo over here, and I think take advantage of that, because the discussion that we just had over here was not about only the role of the private sector. There's an enormous role of governments working together with the private sector to make the enabling environment happen. And while I did introduce Daryl before within our IDB Invest world, I want to introduce Anton Edwards. Anton, if you want to stand up. So Anton covers the entire Caribbean for the public sector side. He's a general manager. He's a partner in crime for Daryl. But also, more importantly, there are a number of country representatives of the IDB group sitting in the audience. You met Karina. Karina manages Barbados, among other things, and a leading force of the transformation that is happening over here. But if I can ask all the country reps that are sitting in the audience to stand up. Don't be shy. Okay. So I see Guyana, Barbados, Costa Rica, Suriname, Trinidad, Bahamas, not Costa Rica, Belize. You're from Costa Rica. So approach them also. You can sit down now. Approach them also, because they're an amazing resource when you think about when public and private sector do come together. Last but not least, there's a group of directors that are on our joint board. So if you can stand up, the group of directors. Don't be shy. It's only the first time. So if you approach them, obviously they're our bosses, they're telling us what to do, and I think it's important that you understand, and they understand directly from you, the good and the bad and the ugly of our institution. So with that, I wanted to close by welcome you all. Thanks all the amazing thought leadership and the partnership that we've had. We were having breakfast this morning, and James was talking wonders of IDB Invest, and I said, keep that for later when you have 800 people in front of you. Don't talk about it now. But you'll have enough sessions to be able to do it. Again, for those of you who have been to Sustainability Week before, you'll understand the concept of partnerships. You'll understand how important that is. Many of our panel members and friends have referred to partnership. For those of you that it's the first Sustainability Week, I hope to blow your mind. So take advantage of that. I know that the blue skies and the ocean is out there. Please don't be distracted by that. Remember, ELEN has $2 billion to lend, and there's a lot of people over here wanting to do business with all of you. So with that, thank you very much and enjoy the session.
Good morning. May I ask you please to have your seats? I promise we have another exciting panel ahead of you. That's Barbados. can I please ask you to have a seat? Thank you. I would. So good morning, everybody. I would like to start this session by saying thank you so much. So I'd like to start the session by saying thank you to the people of Barbados. I'm Brazilian, and you have heard a lot about Manaus. I can start by saying that you are winning already. So the hospitality and the place, the Paradise Island that you have and you are sharing with us all, it's again, the jungle in Barbados is incredible, but your island is just, again, the level of hospitality we are getting from you so far, it's already at not at par from what the Brazilians they were able to offer in Manaus. So bear with me. I just would like to share a couple of thoughts. One is the way we started in Manaus with 900 plus people in the heart of the Amazon. And it's just incredible to remember or to remind us all what has happened there. And I would like to incentivize you here to do and to leverage in the same way this platform. Sustainability Week, we have been able to, after Manaus, in the last 2 years, just before Barbados, we have been able to finance and to improve 2 million lives in projects in the Amazon regions across the 8 countries of the basin. And that's what you heard from our president earlier today. So having heard many of you in the previous panel stating what is the opportunity that all of you have here in terms of leveraging this platform, Sustainability Week can make things happen and get things moving. So I would just like to ask and invite you to make the most of it. That's the first and foremost. Secondly, what is an originate to share in very simple terms? Now, what is it about? Originate assets with our clients. You heard many of our clients before, Evelyn, Roger, James, saying what we do, what we have been doing with them. So we originate, we work with our clients in structuring solutions. We have more than 50 financial solutions in our portfolio, in our product catalog. And we work with our clients to create those assets, financial assets, that will bring a lot of impact to the people, leverage on the capillarity, the banks with many branches, the supermarkets with all the employment, and the building those assets, structuring those financial assets that we can then, via specialized instruments, we can connect with financial markets, with investors across the globe. So we originate the assets, we structure those instruments, and then we deploy and find partners, more than 200 investors across the globe that works closely with us to bring capital to the region. Why that's important? When you look at the $3.5 billion of recapitalization that IDB Invest we just had from our 48 shareholders, countries across the globe, with that we can do between $5 to $7 billion of investments on capital. When we are mobilizing private capital, think about that project that is, we keep 20% of that asset now. So that's $7 billion that we can do. I can multiply by 5, and now from 100 projects, I can do 300 projects for $35 billion. And that's the power of mobilizing private capital from 200, 300 investors across the globe. Bringing that capital to co-invest with IDB Invest in the projects that will bring sustainability, or I love the reliability word that we just heard, to the region. And in projects that will improve lives, together with our clients. So that's originate to share. We originate assets, we create instruments, and then we bring them to investors across the globe via capital markets. And that's what we are going to hear more from our panelists today. But just before inviting our panelists, I would like to invite, following my boss example, I'd just like to invite 3 people to stand up. Just 3 this time. The managing director for syndications, so he's the one leading the relationship with 300 investors across the globe, Joseph Henriquez. I hope he's around here. There you go. So he can also bring billions to the region, so meet the guy. Then I can see next to him is Stace Swan. She's the Managing Director, Division Chief for Blended Finance. Another dry powder of blended can be multiplied by 20 times. So that's a lot of resources that you can use to de-risk and mitigate and enhance, greatly enhance the projects whenever we need finance across the globe. And then Natalia Diaz, I've seen you around here. So she's the Managing Director, Division Chief for Debt Capital Markets across the region, and she can structure, there you go, she just came in with a coffee. So she's energized, and she will have the time to talk to you and originate and structure those assets that we can distribute to the investors across the globe. So I'm now honored to invite the panelists to join me in this session today. So Carlos Garcia is the Director for Debt Capital Markets in Scotiabank. Thank you. Kirstine, Chief Investment Officer of ILX Fund. Hervé, Chief Sustainability Officer for BNP Paribas. And Marcelo, Head of Sustainability, Innovation, and Education for Ambima. Ambima is the National Capital Markets Association in Brazil. So thank you all for being here. For many of you, it has been a long trip. I would like to start with Carlos. When you think about this placement of the transactions that we are structuring together with our clients in bringing in investors, local and international investors, share more with us how we, Scotia and IDB Invest, we work together in making that happen.
Perfect. First of all, thank you for IDB Invest organizing this amazing event. I think the story of collaboration for the bank and IDB Invest has been a journey, and I would like to address a little bit of the journey we have been facing. For us right now, the collaboration and the mobilization is not only a good to have, it's actually a must have, and it's a requirement to move forward and to be able to support the region. As you know, Scotiabank has been in the region since 1889, where we opened our first office in Jamaica, and that was even before we opened the office in Toronto, and we were following our clients through the region, initially with trade finance. But the need of our clients and the complexity of the financing have evolved. Like initially the bank was able to provide on their own balance sheet different solutions, from short-term solutions and long-term solutions. But the capacity of the market and the needs of our clients have expanded a lot. So we no longer are able to do everything by ourselves. So collaborating with IDB Invest and collaborating with other financial institutions has been a must-have for able to grow, to support the growth moving forward, right? I think in terms of what we're doing right now with IDB Invest and where we want to take it is that we like to collaborate from the beginning with IDB Invest to identify opportunities. These opportunities could be in the loan financing, or could be capital markets transaction. And having IDB Invest as a partner is a very important tool for us, especially for the reputation that IDB has with investors, and they follow them around. So I'll start a little bit with more on the loan side, and then I'll walk you through some of the capital market side. So on the loan side, what we have seen is that many international investors, they might not be familiar with an industry, or they might not be familiar with a region, and having IDB Invest there with their seal and their stamp actually help them feel comfortable with participating in the transaction, because they know they have been in the region for a long time and they are able to support them if things go bad, which is the biggest risk that people face. And on the capital market side, I would like to split in two sides. As you know, we as a bank do underwriting of capital markets transaction both in the local market, in local currency in dollars, but we also do international market transactions. When we work in IDB Invest for local DCM transaction, the local investors sometimes are very sensitive on the rating of the transaction or the risk that they take. So being able to work with IDB, looking for innovative solutions will allow them to improve the credit profile of the transaction, actually help a lot to bring more demand on the transaction, either through some kind of guarantee or being part of as an anchor investor. And in the international market, I think the biggest objective for us is to maximize the mobilization. And for us to bring more people, we have to be able to offer it to international investors. All our countries have different tax regimes. So the first thing that having a multilateral support is also helping the issuer being able to access international capital in an efficient way from a tax perspective, but also making sure that those investors that might not be familiar with a specific country in the region, that they also feel confident that they're going to have a good partner in the transaction to support them. That's something that we did very successfully in a transaction for Liberty, Costa Rica, where we did, together with IDB, the first ever AB bond transaction, where we brought over $300 million of international investors in the transaction, and people were very happy with the success. And the last thing I want to say is that I think the objective for us in the collaboration with IDB Invest is always to think about a solution where it allows us to rotate the capital. We want to be there to support our clients and give them the financing they need, but we're able to mobilize to other international investors so that we have dry powder to continue to support other opportunities. As we have talked in the conference so far, the region is growing very fastly, and there's going to be the need for more financing, and we want to be there to support our clients.
Thanks so much, Carlos. And Christine, there we go. Directly from the Netherlands. Again, you manage investments from a fund that you are going to talk more about, ILX. But I would like your help in understanding this asset class, what we call the MDB asset class, a multilateral developed bank asset class. What are the risks? What are the incentives for a fund out of the Netherlands mobilizing pension fund money see in that asset class, and how you have been doing that with IDB Invest? Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to join the panel and to come here. It's very exciting. You mentioned ILX, so let me just give a little bit of a precursor to give the context. So ILX is established exactly to connect institutional investors with what we like to call the emerging markets, real economic growth and impact. So exactly what this panel is all about. And IDBI is one of our core partners. And so thank you to everybody who has actually helped support us and deliver this strategy for investors. And so to your question about risk and how do we look at risk, I will look at it a little bit from different angles, because there is the risk that's in the how you look at it from the IDBI perspective and from the transactional perspective. But then there's also how the institutional investors look at it. And then that is how we connect. And how do we make sure that we can translate the two worlds so that we can create something that's a win-win situation. And so first of all, I think it is quite important to understand a premise that we are working with and that we have proven in real life. And that is that institutional investors are not unwilling to take emerging markets risk or to take the risk that comes from the projects. But the risk needs to be understood from their perspective, and it needs to be appropriately compensated, and it needs to be managed and aligned with the institutional framework that they understand and relate themselves to. And I say all of this because it is where an institution like an IDBI comes in and plays an incredibly strong role, because you help support and reduce some of the barriers related to some of these aspects. You have, and we've seen here all the country managers, the directors here, you have what I'd like to call boots on the ground. You have the familiarity with all the local customs, the borrowers that we work with, the individual sort of understanding of countries and so forth. For an investor that sits in Europe, that can seem very far away. So to have that connecting in with understanding that you really know how to work in these countries with these borrowers, with these settings, reduces that asymmetry, and that makes sure that the risk becomes more known. There is a comfort from how you operate, understanding the projects. And so breaching that information gap in making sure that that's being translated into known processes around how you do due diligence, how you underwrite a project becomes very, very important in translating those risks that can seem far away from some into something that feels trusted, standardized, and predictable. And that is really part of making sure that these risks are understood. And I think that comes through your very strong processes, your very strong local familiarity, and your own individual track record. So understanding these deal risks that are there is quite important. Then the last bit that I mentioned is aligning it in with the institutional investors framework becomes quite important because they are operating under their institutional framework logic, which is that the portfolio that they're investing into needs to meet their requirements. So they look at the individual transactions that goes into the portfolio, but really what they're appreciating is that the portfolio matches into what they want to invest into. And so here the selection around the risk return has to match with what they're desiring, of course. But there's also a lot of other elements that go into that risk proposition as well. And that is to do with, can we get the information, the reporting that's required, in particular if it's an impact mandate. There are very stringent requirements about being able to understand that. Can we put the portfolio together so that it's curated well enough so that it's diversified according to the needs of the institutional investors? That also becomes a very important aspect. So there's a whole host of issues that's associated with putting that portfolio together based on the predictable stream of pipelines and underwriting that you're delivering that is allowing that portfolio to emerge that the institutional investors feel comfortable with. So all in all, it really comes down to breaking down that information asymmetry that is there, building trusted processes and predictability around the pipeline and the underwriting processes that you have, and aligning it into an overall portfolio that can be absorbed into the framework that the institutional investors are working with. So for me, that's a bit of putting that whole value chain and ecosystem together and putting it together so that it's predictable, repeatable, and allowing for the scale that the investors need to come in. Overall, that reduces the risk and allows them to come in. But there's individual components that goes into that.
Thanks, Christine. Hervé, for international bank, we keep hearing now about the hype or the renaissance of Latin America and the Caribbean. No? The past years and the years that are basically in front of us with all we heard James and the President talking about the opportunities of the superpowers of LAC supplying what is needed to the rest of the globe and the needs of LAC and what the globe can provide to LAC. So as an international bank making that connection, how you see and how you are managing that?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and glad to be here again after Manaus 2 years ago. One has to go back first to the opportunity set, the barriers, what an international bank need to enter, and where the IDB Invest comes in to both mobilize and scale. So in terms of opportunities, you're all very familiar, but basically for Latin America and the Caribbean, estimates are about $2 to $3 trillion of investment needed by 2030 to achieve the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, which is about 3 to 5% of GDP of the region. And the opportunities are primarily in 3 areas. One is renewable energy resources. And what's quite interesting with Latin American and Caribbean is that a number of countries do have regulatory incentives and or policies to encourage green energy production. Second is critical minerals, where the countries have vast resources of nickel, graphite, copper, we all know the list. And third, the countries can leverage nature, especially both for carbon sequestration, but also for global food security. Now, in terms of obstacles, Latin America does not offer only purely sustainable investments. We do compete with also investments in fossil fuels, in conventional agriculture, in mining. And if we look again at those opportunities I mentioned, low carbon and sustainable projects face barriers of typically high upfront cost, new technology risk, uncertain returns, complex regulations. When you go to nature-based solutions, the projects tend to be rather small scale, which is another hurdle for the large capital markets. And last, there are inherent macro risk depending on the areas in terms of political risk, currency. So this requires a coordinated action between the public and the private sector. And especially for international banks and large capital markets, we need primarily two things. One is to alleviate some of those risks, be it contract enforcements, be it currency, be it ESG management. And we also need an equitable risk allocation between stakeholders and for the various project risk. So that's where IDB comes in, because as we heard, first of all, you provide comfort, especially, for example, in the AB structure, which we just heard. It provides a strong comfort for private investors to come in. But what's also quite interesting is the way you manage to mobilize by creating capacity in your own balance sheet. And that's maybe, as we've heard about the AB bond and the AB loans, I'd like to spend a moment talking a little bit about Scaling for Impact, which you launched back in 24 with a second retap in 2025. And it was the first securitization focused on Latin America and the Caribbean, led by with MDB assets, basically, for private investors. It was also, I believe, your first portfolio level risk transfer at IDB Invest, and it allowed to do three things. The first one was to leverage the Global Emerging Markets database, showcasing basically that MDB assets are performing, have low default rates, and actually high recovery rates in case of default. So that was quite interesting, just spotlighting that through this innovative transaction. Second, you are optimizing your balance sheet. It was the initial transaction was $1 billion securitization, freeing up close to $500 million, I believe, allowing to remobilize or create additional lending capacity to new projects. And third, it served as a template for crowding in private investors. So that is extremely interesting ways and development, especially in terms of innovation. And between the comfort and the innovation that IDB Invest provides, it has a strong power to drag in private investors.
Thanks, Hervé. Yeah, that's a very important point. Is we are doing not only maximizing the distribution of assets, bringing in investors on the primary when we are structuring the project with our client, but also in secondary and on a portfolio basis. In this securitization, we had more than 20 countries represented in the portfolio that we securitized to the markets, bringing in investors to the region and being able to free up more of our capital to do more projects with investors. Now shifting gears to Marcelo, the question here, Marcelo, is the framework of originate to share requires a lot of regulatory and local markets discipline and the development around capital markets in each one of those countries. How you see that as part of the entire equation that we are discussing here? Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio. First of all, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. For Ambima, it's a pleasure to be in this discussion. Before answering, just to give a little bit of context of what exactly Ambima does, I think it's important for us answering that question. We are as an association that represents in Brazil both the sell side and the buy side industry. Any company in those industries in Brazil are represented by Ambima. And we are also a self-regulatory organism, so we set rules for our members. For example, the sustainable investment funds are registered with rules designed by Ambima. The rules for the sustainable bonds are also created by Ambima in Brazil. So we look at the sustainable finance in particular, are a more particular case for the development of the Brazilian capital markets. That's our mission. So in order to answer your question, I just tell a story. I'm at Ambima for the last 15 years, but long before that, I used to be a journalist. And my favorite topic when I was a journalist in finance, it was to write about why Brazil wouldn't develop capital markets and why Brazilian companies would not finance themselves in the private market. 20 years ago, that would be true to Brazil. And one of the answers, there are many answers. In any market failure, you will find a lot of factors to explain something. But the favorite answer in Brazil is because BNDES, or National Development Bank, will prevent the private capital to go into the market because cheaper capital means the private market will not, it will crowding out the private funds. That was not completely correct. But what we learned in the last 20 years, and now that we do have a corporate debt market very well developed in Brazil, is that BNDES should be a partner and that we are not competing for finance. There would be projects that were really, really not proper for the private investors to finance, and that BNDES would play a role, very important for us, and that also, BNDES was setting a track record for also the markets to learn how to finance determined projects. So in the last 15 years, Brazil has developed a very, very proper capital markets. We have a we are setting to get a record in the bonds markets this year. There are missing pieces yet, but this partnership between government, the National Development Bank, and the market was really important in order for us to reach the point where we are now. So when we look at something like originate to share from the IBD, it's something that, okay, we have been there, it works, there are the space for both the private and the public institutions to work on those missing pieces. So for us, it's kind of a new line, a new pipeline that our members will take advantage of. When we look in our sustainable fund industry, that is really in the first stages of development in Brazil, one of the problems that they have, we don't have the assets to put in our portfolios. Where are the assets that we will buy in order to offer sustainable funds in Brazil? So that's a project like that, and now the efforts that the BNDES and the eco-investor are doing in Brazil are kind of creating this critical mass of assets that our industry will need. So I think it's really, really important step for us to really develop a more sound and sustainable market for those assets. And also, it's kind of the partnership that we need to find the missing pieces and to reach our goals in sustainable finance.
Thanks, Marcelo. A very good segue to my next question to Christine. That is, again, when you talked about the importance of a market, an asset class, building it. So, Christine, how would you be able to shift from these one-off transactions and building that asset class and then instead of being called an alternative asset class that limits the funding available, how we can actually transform these in bringing in more pension fund capital to invest or co-invest with us in the impactful projects that we have across Latin America and the Caribbean.
No, thank you. I think that is our bread and butter. So, as we'd already learned here, we are in vibrant Caribbean, and just listening, and just this morning, there's a wealth of opportunities for institutional investors to invest in. But how do you do it? I think this is the question that you're asking. And I think as I mentioned before, for institutional investors that are far away, finding these opportunities is actually not easy, which is why you need these connectors. So institutions like yourself have these relationships, have this access. But the institutional investors that work all around the world does not have the ability to do it in the same way. So this information asymmetry that I talked about before, and the access, the ability to connect these many different parts of the world into one access point actually becomes a bit of a barrier for them. So I think the first one is to say that the access needs to be created, and you need to make sure that the information is being translated into a world that is understood. And the MDBs, like yourself, really play a very, very instrumental role. You bring the pipeline, you bring the consistency around the quality of the pipeline, and you bring the predictability. That is an information barrier in the first place. For the institutional investors to take it a little bit further, again, they need that being translated into a portfolio. So they actually look at the individual transactions and making sure that it fits in there. But again, it's really the portfolio that needs to go in there. So from the assets, there needs to be selection about the asset that is fitting exactly the mandate that they are desiring. And there needs to be the information that comes out of the due diligence, the information that comes out of the portfolio needs to be translated into their matrices and their information requirements. So the information is quite important, and then leads to the next one, which is the portfolio composition. It has to be aligned in with their asset allocation requirements, their reporting requirements, their desired ability to understand it from their governance and their sort of regulatory perspective, and the trust around how you do due diligence, how that consistency is created, how that access is consistent becomes quite important. And so again, all of this ecosystem, making the predictability, making it transparent, making the data available on a consistent, on a large-scale basis, allowing the investors to go from small little transaction into a big portfolio, into something that is known and that can be deployed and repeated. So that's the ecosystem where we all play a little part in that value chain, but it's the value chain and the ecosystem and the collaboration that makes this happen in the grand scale. And I think the proof point is actually in ILX and many others like ourselves that this is achievable. So I'm quite hopeful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine. So I will thinking about the ecosystem that you are just referring to. So I will go back to Carlos and ask if you had one wish, and I will have the same question to all of you. If you had one wish, how you would make this viable and fruitful for the entire ecosystem to flourish? What for the originate to share platform from the assets that are impactful to connecting to investors? What would be your wish?
I think for me, the biggest wish that I have is that we can start seeing IDB Invest and the other MDBs as not as competitors, but as partners, and that we work together from the beginning of the solution. Because if we sit on the table all together, I think we can find very clear ideas on how to finance the project or the needs of the client, but also maximize the mobilization. And for us, the biggest mobilization possible is where we come in to help structure a transaction, but at the end, we're able to bring in the capital markets investors from local markets, but also international. That would be the wish that I would have, that we had that opportunity to do it in a more consistent way.
Thank you, Carlos. Hervé?
I will have three quick ones. The first one is to keep doing what I just described, but doing it for other banks' balance sheet, and actually Reinvest Plus that was announced is a way to repackage performing loans, add insurance, distribute, free up capital. So that's one. I'd like to see more of that, and you had a great announcement recently. The second is equity. The greater the technology risk, the greater the development risk, and the less bankable projects are. And equity investment must be then therefore more front-loaded and also take a greater share of the capital stack. And I think the fact that MDBs and especially IDB Invest is exploring and going into this is a great way. And the last one, it's more an area of focus. I think green shoring is an amazing opportunity for many countries in this region. There is plentiful of renewable and hydro energy, as we know. And we need to quit that view that the only way to export energy is through electrons. When you take mining waste and transform that into a low or zero carbon product that you ship to Europe or to Asia, it's as a semi-finished product to do steel or to do cement. You're not doing anything less than exporting renewable energy. And I think there are a lot of industrial projects that can be achieved and financed that way and leverage the amazing resources that those countries have combined with decarbonized energy.
Thank you, Ever, and congratulations to BNP Paribas, and we are very pleased to have them partnering with us in a very strong collaboration to build this, what I like to call public good, is what we call Reinvest Plus, is lots of media available, so you can search and talk about it. We would need and require another panel just about this structure that is planning to consolidate assets from across the region, from many originators and banks in emerging markets and developed economies to be able to securitize those assets in global pools in that international debt capital markets, providing funding that will recycle that capital onwards. So BNP Paribas and IDB Invest and IDB Group, we are working on this new platform that hopefully will have a first issuance by year end. Marcelo, your wish.
Yeah.
Maybe you can have 3 as well.
Yeah, I have to choose, just 2. Hervé already mentioned it, but just to stress a point, I think when it comes to sustainability, the big projects, we kind of know how to do it, and it's just a matter of the right structure and the big pockets that we can find to finance them. The problem comes when we have those several small projects. That's, for example, in Brazil is the case in Amazon. We don't have big projects that demand a lot of money, but we have several small projects that we need to finance. And we still don't have a proper answer to that. How we can do that at scale to finance those millions of projects that we need to finance in order to make it feasible. I think we didn't reach that point yet. And that is one of the big things that we have to do in very short term. And in the second, I think Ambima, we do a lot of research on the investor behavior in Brazil. And also we notice that when we talk to investors about sustainable assets, we kind of invert the conversation. So Ambima does also training for all the professionals. We certify all the professionals in Brazil that distribute products. And we notice that how we teach them sustainable assets. First, we talk about a lot about the risks of that investment, then maybe about the return, and then maybe about how that kind of investment fits in the portfolio of the investor. Every other product, we go the other way around. We talked about return, how that fits for you, how it can perform your portfolio, and lastly, we mentioned the risks. So I think also that we as a market need to learn how to introduce to the investors sustainable assets as an asset as any other that has a space in the portfolio Try not to scare the investors so much, because that sometimes keeps them from investing in assets that would fit in their portfolio. So that's shifting the conversation is also necessary.
Thanks, Marcelo. Appreciate it. So I'm conscious of time, so I'd like to close by asking Christine about the mismatch. What we are actually seeing and offering in terms of assets, and what actually the investors they would like to see. So what is the biggest mismatch you see, and how we fix that? Thank you.
So I don't know if it's necessarily a mismatch, if it's more about different perspectives. And I think in this forum here, we would often talk about what's economically important. What is it where do we need to put the capital? Whereas investors are just inherently more, because of their worldview and what they're set in the world to do, looking more at what's investable from their perspective. That's not necessarily a mismatch. That's why you just need the connectors in between. So as I said before, the investors are looking for transparency, comparability, operational simplicity. How does it fit into their frameworks? They are certainly looking for responsible investing as well and impact. So I do find that to be a big component. But they're also looking for scale, right? So there are lots of different things that they're looking to, wanting to see. But too often, sometimes in forums like this, it's more a conversation about where the capital is needed instead of what is it that investors require to scale. So that's why I think this panel is actually quite important. And again, I can just say trusted partners, strong collaborative ecosystems and value change to really make sure, again, that you are trying to understand what it is that investors are needing and put the funnel of pipelines into them so that they can efficiently allocate to do it. And so again, the collaboration is very, very important. So what can I wish for? I could wish for all the private sector projects, please come talk to IDB Invest, because they come talk to us and we'll make sure that we select them to put them into the right portfolio for the investors, and then they get investable financing. And then that becomes the circle, the positive circle that we're all looking for. But again, it's not a mismatch, it's more the connection, because I don't think you can ask that we all have the same perspective, because it's different institutions that are being put in the world to do different things. But that's not to say that we cannot connect them. But it's that connection that we need to create.
Thanks, Christine. And I think the message we are getting here from Christine is early on. No, it's connecting early on, is structuring that project in a way that the investors will want to invest in it. And that's our job. That's how IDB Invest is connecting investors to assets. That's what this panel was about. I would like to emphasize a couple of points. One is upstream work that we call. I think governments are really important. We heard our president, we heard James Scriven talking about the importance of regulatory framework to enable the environment so the environment can flourish and attract those investments that we much needed for the development of our countries in the region. Finally, two more points that I would like to emphasize. One is equity. We are creating another platform that we call Collabora Capital Partners to mobilize equity at scale. What we see across the region, and Hervé mentioned it, it's many of our projects to become bankable. You need skin in the game from the sponsors, and many of our clients, they are saying we are missing equity to make that project viable so we can add the debt, we can add the leverage to that project. And that's a solution that the ecosystem is working on, and how we can mobilize equity at scale to make those projects bankable and to do it. And the third one that I would like to close with it is the perception, that maybe is not mismatch, a perception that is the risk perception. You probably heard about Global Emerging Markets Database, GEMS. When you see that the data that is available from more than 20 multilateral development banks and developed finance institutions of the over 2 decades, the credit history of that portfolio is just incredibly beautiful. Standard & Poor's is now crunching the numbers, and hopefully we have real data that we can explore, but the immediate effect is that the perceived risk of assets across Latin America and Caribbean in terms of non-performance loans and recovery ratios are actually much better risk than what is perceived. So the point that we all need to understand here when we are working with investors across the globe is we need to educate those investors about that perceived risk. Because one important point, and again, when you think about your pensions in a pension fund and a pension fund investing in assets, emerging markets, developed economy assets, you want your pension to be healthy. So it's very important to define the right risk-reward for that pension fund to invest. And that's what we are fine-tuning here. What is the perceived risk and what is the price to market for that risk so we can attract that capital. So when we are crowding in investors across the globe to invest in projects in our region, we are making sure that we are pricing it to the risk that we are taking. And therefore, your pensions are safe, and you can co-invest with us via the pension funds that we are mobilized to invest, in addition to many other qualified institutional buyers in debt capital markets across the globe. So I would like to invite all of you and ask a round of applause to our panelists. I think it was very enriching, and thank you so much for coming all the way here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Fabio, and all the speakers. Now we're going to take a short break. There will be multiple stations outside serving coffee and snacks, and we'll meet you here in 30 minutes. Thank you.